Imagine digging through an old box in your attic, sifting through forgotten trinkets, dusty keepsakes, and loose change that has sat untouched for decades. Your hand brushes against a small envelope, and inside is a simple silver-colored coin, worn slightly with age but still gleaming faintly in the light. It looks like an ordinary quarter, one of those countless Washington quarters you've probably seen a million times before. But what if I told you that the very coin you were holding could be a rare 1967 Washington quarter-dollar era coin, and that instead of being worth just 25 cents, its true value could range anywhere from $40,000 to an astonishing $208,000? That's not just loose change. It's a life-changing discovery hiding in plain sight. The 1967 Washington quarter is a fascinating coin in its own right. It was born during a period of change in American coinage, a time when the U.S. Mint was under pressure, both politically and economically. Only 2 years earlier, in 1965, silver was removed from circulating dimes, quarters, and half dollars due to rising silver prices and the government struggle to keep coins in circulation. For decades, quarters have been composed of 90% silver, making them not only valuable as currency, but also for their metal content. But by 1967, the quarter was struck on a copper-nickel-clad planchet, a sandwich of copper in the center with nickel covering the outside, giving it a silver-like appearance but without the intrinsic precious metal value. This was also a transitional time when the mint, overwhelmed by demand for coins, suspended mint marks from 1965 through 1967 to discourage hoarding. That means that every Washington quarter struck in 1967 looks nearly identical at first glance. No distinguishing D for Denver or S for San Francisco. They were all minted without marks, a decision meant to get coins back into circulation as quickly as possible. But even in this streamlined process, errors slipped through the cracks. And those mistakes are the treasures collectors hunt for today. Error coins, especially from the 1960s, have a unique appeal. By their very nature, they're accidents, coins that should never have left the mint but somehow did. And when you find one, you're holding a piece of minting history, a small rebellion against the precision and uniformity the mint strives for. Some errors are minor, like slight misalignments, but others are dramatic, turning an ordinary coin into something extraordinary. The 1967 Washington quarter dollar has been found with some of the most intriguing and valuable errors. And those are the coins that command prices of $40,000 to $208,000 on the collector's market. Now let's dive into what makes these coins so exceptional. One of the most sought-after errors is a double die strike, where the design appears to have been imprinted twice, slightly offset. This can result in doubled letters and inscriptions like Liberty or In God We Trust, or in the date 1967 itself. To the untrained eye, it might look like a small blur, but to a collector, it's a sign of rarity, and depending on the sharpness of the doubling, these coins can sell for staggering amounts. Another prized error is the off-center strike, where the coin is struck improperly so that part of the design is missing and a blank crescent of metal is left behind. The more dramatic the off-center error, say 50% off-center while still showing the date, the more valuable the coin becomes. There are also coins struck on the wrong planchet, a mistake that happens when a blank intended for another denomination ends up in a quarter press. Imagine a quarter struck on a dime planchet or even a foreign coin planchet. These anomalies are exceedingly rare, but when they surface, they spark bidding wars among collectors. And then there are broad strikes, die clashes, and missing elements, all of which can make a 1967 Washington quarter stand out as something truly special. But here's the part that makes this so engaging. These error coins are out there. They're not locked away in museums or hidden behind glass cases in national collections. Many of them were released into circulation just like every other coin in 1967. That means they could be sitting in a jar of quarters in your kitchen, resting in a drawer of an old desk, or mixed in with coins you inherited from a grandparent. It's the possibility that keeps collectors on their toes. The dream that a $40,000 or even $208,000 treasure could be hiding among ordinary change. Think about that for a moment. A coin worth $208,000 looks, at a quick glance, no different than a coin you might use to buy a gumball. The value is hidden in the details, waiting for the right set of eyes to spot it. That's why collectors carefully examine coins under magnifying glasses, scrutinizing every line, every inscription, every edge. Because one small detail, one little error, can mean the difference between a quarter worth 25 cents and one worth enough to buy a house. And it's not just about the money, though the numbers are jaw-dropping. Collecting error coins is about the story each coin carries. The 1967 Washington quarter error coins represent a time of transition, a mint under pressure, and the inevitable flaws that happen when machines and humans are pushed to their limits. Owning one of these coins is like holding a tangible piece of that history in your hand, a reminder that even in systems designed for perfection, mistakes happen, and sometimes those mistakes are worth more than perfection itself. Auction houses have seen these coins cross the block and fetch jaw-dropping figures, with collectors eagerly competing to own them. Stories circulate in the coin-collecting community of individuals who stumbled upon these treasures purely by chance. A man once found an error quarter in his pocket change, took it to a dealer for curiosity's sake, and walked out with thousands of dollars in cash. Others have inherited collections and only later discovered that one small coin among hundreds was worth more than the rest combined. These tales fuel the excitement, making every coin hunt an adventure filled with possibility. Imagine being that person, the one who unknowingly holds a quarter valued at $208,000, only to discover its significance one day. The shock, the disbelief, the rush of realizing that something so small could carry such enormous value. That's the thrill of numismatics. And that's what keeps collectors searching. What should you look for if you come across a 1967 Washington quarter? First, pay close attention to the date and lettering. Is there any doubling? Does the strike look slightly off? Is part of the design missing or incomplete? Next, check the edges. Errors in the reading, the tiny ridges around the edge of the coin, can also signal rarity. And don't overlook the weight. If a quarter seems unusually heavy or light, it might have been struck on the wrong planchet, which could mean you're holding something incredibly rare. The real beauty of the 1967 Washington quarter error coins is that they remind us value can be hidden in the most ordinary places. They teach us to look closer, to pay attention, to appreciate the details. And they prove that sometimes what looks like a simple quarter can instead be a ticket to a fortune of $40,000, $100,000, or even $208,000. So, the next time you're handed a quarter, don't just toss it in your pocket and forget about it. Take a moment to look closer. Because who knows? That humble coin could be more than change. It could be history, it could be a story, and it could be the discovery that changes everything. Picture this. You're standing in line at a grocery store, digging into your pocket for change, and you pull out a quarter. At first glance, it looks just like any other coin. Nothing out of the ordinary, just a 1983 Washington quarter with that familiar profile of George Washington on the front. But what if that very coin was more than just a piece of pocket change? What if that coin carried a hidden secret, an error born in the U.S. Mint in 1983 that makes it worth not 25 cents, not even a few $100s, but somewhere between $31,500 and an astonishing $191,000? That's the kind of story that turns an ordinary moment into a life-changing discovery, and it's exactly why the 1983 Washington quarter error coin continues to spark excitement among collectors and treasure hunters alike. The 1983 Washington quarter comes from an interesting moment in U.S. coinage history. The design of the Washington quarter itself dates back to 1932, when it was introduced to honor the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth. Sculptor John Flanagan's portrait of Washington was chosen, and for decades it remained a staple in American wallets, cash registers, and vending machines. But by 1983, the coins being struck were no longer the silver quarters that many older Americans remembered. Instead, like all quarters since 1965, they were made of copper-nickel clad, a copper core sandwiched between two layers of nickel to give it that silver-like appearance. 1983 was also a time when the U.S. Mint was still recovering from the coin shortages of the late 1970s and early 1980s. Production had to be quick, efficient, and massive. The Denver Mint alone, marked with the little d on these quarters, struck hundreds of millions of coins that year. With that kind of volume, errors were bound to happen, and some of those errors became so extraordinary that they turned ordinary coins into incredible rarities. What makes the 1983 Washington quarter error coins so special? It comes down to the types of mistakes that slipped through the Mint's quality control and into circulation. One of the most dramatic and valuable errors is when a quarter is struck on the wrong planchet. Imagine a coin that should have been struck on a quarter-sized blank accidentally being struck on a dime or even a foreign coin planchet. That smaller or mismatched blank results in a quarter that looks odd, maybe smaller, lighter, or with missing details around the edges. These are extremely rare and highly desirable among collectors. Another fascinating error involves off-center strikes, where the coin is not properly aligned in the press. The result? Part of the design is missing, and you'll see a blank crescent of metal on one side. The more dramatic the off-center, the higher the value, especially if the date and mint mark are still visible. Then there are double die errors, where the die itself has shifted slightly between strikes, creating the appearance of doubled letters or numbers. On a 1983 D quarter, this could mean doubled inscriptions like "In God We Trust" or even the year 1983. To most people, it might look like a small blur, but for collectors, that doubling is like a neon sign screaming rare treasure. One of the most exciting aspects of the 1983 D error coins is that they can show up anywhere. They weren't created for collectors, and they weren't deliberately released. They slipped into circulation, right alongside millions of ordinary quarters. That means one could be sitting in a change jar, hiding in the back of a dresser drawer, or tucked away in a shoebox of coins passed down from a relative. It's that sense of possibility that makes the hunt so thrilling. Imagine pulling a coin worth between $31,500 and $191,000 out of your pocket when you thought you were just holding a simple piece of change. What's even more fascinating is that 1983 itself was a year with quirks for collectors. Because of economic conditions and mint policies at the time, there were no official U.S. mint sets released that year. Collectors who wanted pristine examples of coins from 1983 had to pull them directly from circulation, meaning that high-quality, well-preserved examples are already harder to come by. Combine that with error varieties, and you got a recipe for serious rarity and value. Think about how wild that is. An ordinary coin minted during a year when collectors didn't have easy access to new coins, combined with the right kind of minting error, has the potential to be worth over $191,000 today. That's more than a car, more than a year's salary for many people, even enough to put a serious dent in a mortgage. All tied up in something most of us wouldn't look at twice when it jingles in our pocket. Collectors know the thrill of discovery well. Stories circulate of lucky finds, people who stumbled upon error coins while sorting through spare change. A man once picked up a roll of quarters from a bank only to discover one of these rare 1983 D errors inside, turning a $10 purchase into tens of thousands of dollars. Another person found a 1983 D quarter with a dramatic off-center strike in their pocket change and sold it for a small fortune. These aren't myths. They're real stories that fuel the imagination of collectors everywhere. How do you know if you've got one of these gems in your own hands? Start with the basics. Look closely at the date, 1983 with the D mint mark. Then, examine the coin for signs of error. Is the design off-center? Are there doubled letters or numbers? Does the coin feel lighter or smaller than a typical quarter, possibly indicating the wrong planchet was used? Even subtle differences can mean the world to a collector. That if you spot something unusual, the next step is to have the coin authenticated by a professional grading service. This is crucial because the value of an error coin skyrockets when it's certified genuine. Collectors are willing to pay top dollar for coins that are verified and encapsulated by trusted grading companies. A 1983 D Washington quarter error that's certified can easily reach values in the range of $31,500 to $191,000 at auction, depending on the type and severity of the error and the condition of the coin itself. And here's the exciting part. Error coins don't lose their appeal. If anything, they grow in value as time passes and fewer high-quality examples remain in circulation. Every year, as collectors add more of these error coins to their private collections, the number available to the public shrinks, making them even more desirable. It's supply and demand at its finest. Fewer coins and more collectors means higher prices. When you think about it, there's something almost magical about error coins. They weren't supposed to exist. They represent tiny moments when the system faltered, when the mechanical precision of the mint wavered just enough to create something unique. In a world where billions of coins are made to look exactly the same, an error coin is a rebel, a one-of-a-kind artifact that carries the story of its mistake. And for the 1983 D Washington quarter error, that story translates into incredible value and fascination. The next time you come across a quarter, don't just toss it into your wallet without a second thought. Take a closer look, because hiding in plain sight, that small coin could be worth not 25 cents, not a few bucks, but a life-changing fortune. Between $31,500 and $191,000 is no small sum, and the thought that it could be hiding in the change you handle every day is enough to make anyone stop and look twice. Collectors often say that every coin tells a story. The 1983 D. Washington quarter-era coins tell a story of transition, of a mint under pressure, of human error meeting mechanical imperfection, and of ordinary people discovering treasures in the most unexpected places. They remind us that sometimes the greatest value isn't found in gold or silver, but in the overlooked, the ordinary, the coins we take for granted, until we realize one of them might just change our lives. Close your eyes for a moment and picture the year 1994. It was a time when the U.S. Mint was striking billions of coins for everyday use, and in Denver, the familiar Washington quarter was being produced in massive numbers. Millions of Americans held these coins daily, tossed them into vending machines, saved them in jars, or passed them along without a second thought. But what many people didn't know then, and what many still don't know now, is that some of those 1994 D. Washington quarters were anything but ordinary. Hidden among the billions were rare error coins, the kind that slipped through the Mint's strict quality checks and went unnoticed until lucky people spotted them years later. And here's the shocking part. One of those rare errors could transform a simple 25-cent coin into something valued between $31,500 and $191,000. Imagine finding that in your change from the grocery store. The Washington quarter design had already been circulating for over 60 years by 1994. John Flanagan's portrait of George Washington on the obverse had become an icon of American coinage. On the reverse, the proud image of an eagle with wings spread symbolized strength and freedom. By this point, people had become so accustomed to the design that most never gave it more than a passing glance. But collectors know that sometimes it's not the design itself that matters. It's the imperfections. A slight doubling of a letter, a coin struck off-center, or even being struck on the wrong planchet can make the difference between an ordinary piece of change and a once-in-a-lifetime treasured what makes the 1994 D. Washington quarter errors so intriguing. The Denver Mint was known for massive production output, and in 1994, it produced hundreds of millions of quarters. With such high volume, mistakes were inevitable. Among the most valuable are double-die errors, where parts of the design appear duplicated. To an untrained eye, this doubling may look like a blur or shadow effect on words like liberty or the motto "In God We Trust." But for collectors, this is like striking gold. Another type of error is the off-center strike, where the coin was not properly aligned in the press, resulting in part of the design being cut off and leaving a crescent of blank metal exposed. The more dramatic the off-center strike, the rarer and more valuable the coin becomes, especially if the date and mint mark are still visible. But perhaps the most thrilling kind of error is when a quarter is struck on the wrong planchet. Picture a blank intended for a dime, a nickel, or even a foreign coin accidentally ending up in the press for quarters. When that happens, you get a Washington quarter that looks and feels different, smaller, thinner, or missing parts of the design around the rim. These types of errors don't just turn heads. They command staggering prices at auction. And that's where the magic numbers come in, $31,500 to $191,000. Those aren't just random figures. They're real values that collectors have been willing to pay for 1994 D. Washington quarter error coins, depending on the type of error and the condition of the coin. Now imagine this scenario. Someone empties their pocket change onto the table, sorting through quarters to do laundry. At first, every coin looks the same, but then something catches their eye. One quarter looks slightly off, maybe the design is shifted, or maybe the coin feels lighter. They don't think much of it and toss it aside. But if that person had known what they were holding, if they had looked closer, they might have realized they were staring at a coin worth as much as $191,000. That's the kind of life-changing mistake most people wouldn't want to make. Error coins like the 1994 D. Washington quarter remind us just how unpredictable the world of numismatics can be. They aren't planned rarities like commemorative coins. They're accidents, products of a moment when machines faltered or when blanks weren't sorted correctly. And because they were never intended to exist, each one carries a story of survival. They slipped past inspectors, entered circulation, and wound up in people's pockets, waiting to be discovered. That's why collectors chase them with such passion. They represent history, luck, and rarity all wrapped up in a piece of metal that most people ignore. The real beauty of this story lies in possibility. Right now, As you're listening, there could be a 1994 D. Washington quarter error sitting unnoticed in someone's dresser drawer, tucked into a roll of quarters from the bank, or lying in a jar of coins gathering dust. That possibility fuels the imagination and keeps treasure hunters searching. It's not just about money. It's about the thrill of discovery. But make no mistake, the money is incredible. A coin that cost the mint just a fraction of a penny to produce can end up trading hands for tens of thousands, even close to $200,000. That's the kind of return no stock market or lottery ticket could ever guarantee. Take a moment to think about how $31,500 to $191,000 could change someone's life. That kind of money could pay off student loans, buy a new car, cover a year or two of rent, or even put a down payment on a house. And all of it could come from something most people wouldn't even bend down to pick up off the street, a single quarter. That's the magic and allure of rare coin errors. They transform the mundane into the extraordinary. Now let's go deeper into why these errors from 1994 DE are so fascinating to collectors. By the mid-1990s, coin collecting was enjoying renewed popularity. The state quarters program was just around the corner, launching in 1999 and bringing millions of new collectors into the hobby. But those who were already passionate about coins knew to keep an eye on quarters from earlier years. Since the U.S. Mint did not release official coin sets for every year, many people had to rely on circulation coins to complete their collections. And that meant errors like those from 1994 D became even more desirable, as they stood out from the otherwise ordinary sea of clad quarters. Point one particularly famous example involves quarters struck on experimental or foreign planchets. Every so often, the Mint tests different metals or recycles blanks from other coin programs. If one of those blanks accidentally makes its way into the wrong press, you end up with a coin that shouldn't exist. These are incredibly rare, and when paired with a clear date and mint mark like 1994 D, they can reach jaw-dropping values at auction. That's when the $191,000 figure really comes into play. Collectors know they may never see another one like it, so they're willing to pay whatever it takes to own that little piece of history. But here's the catch. Finding one requires sharp eyes and a bit of luck. Most error coins blend into circulation without drawing attention. It takes patience, persistence, and sometimes years of searching to come across one. Yet that's part of the thrill. For many collectors, it's like a treasure hunt where the prize is not buried under the ground but hiding in plain sight. Every coin handled, every roll opened, and every jar of change sorted carries the potential for discovery. That let's not forget the importance of condition. A 1994 D error coin in worn condition will still have value, but if you find one in excellent shape, sharp details, minimal wear, perhaps even with its original mint luster intact, that's when prices soar. Grading companies like PCGS or NGC play a huge role here. A coin that's certified as genuine and graded at a high level can sell for dramatically more than one that isn't authenticated. Collectors want reassurance that what they're buying is the real deal, and grading provides that security. And here's something to think about. Every year, more and more of these error coins are taken out of circulation and tucked away into private collections. Once they're locked in, they don't often come back out. That means the pool of available coins gets smaller and prices keep climbing. For the 1994 D error quarter, that upward trend has already been seen, with auctions reaching into the six-figure range. The next time you come across a quarter with the date 1994 and a little D mint mark, don't just pass it along. Take a closer look. Check for signs of doubling in the letters, examine the alignment of the design, and see if the coin feels different than it should. You might just be holding onto a hidden treasure. And remember, while most quarters are worth 25 cents, the rarest 1994 D Washington quarter errors are valued between $31,500 and $191,000. That's not just loose change. That's a fortune waiting to be discovered. In the end, coins like the 1994 D Washington quarter error remind us that history, chance, and opportunity sometimes come together in the smallest of packages. They're proof that even in something as ordinary as pocket change, extraordinary value can be hiding in plain sight. And that's why collectors will never stop looking, and why the stories of lucky finds will continue to inspire people everywhere. Because sometimes the difference between pocket change and life-changing wealth is just one overlooked coin.